Just to sort of go over the format that we use here during our debates, each candidate will be posed the same question. They'll have 90 seconds to respond. Then after everyone has their turn, we'll come back and ask if anybody has a rebuttal. Now, when we talk about rebuttal, we're going to give you about 60 seconds or so, but that doesn't necessarily mean it has to be a rebuttal. If someone's said something that prompted another thought, that's absolutely okay for you to use that time there as well. But if you want to discuss and or argue with somebody, that's awesome too. Makes for great television. So we are live, of course, and we're going to go till 1 o'clock. So I want to introduce you to the people who are going to ask the awesome questions. Very, very well researched. Mr. Tim Murphy from ONNtv.
Speaking of great television, here I am.
And Lorna and Rudolph with the Sault Ste. Marie Association of Ratepayers. Lorna, thank you for being here. I appreciate it.
Welcome back, Lorna.
Thank you, Timmy.
Timmy.
Yeah.
So our candidates' introductions now, because they pick numbers, this is the order that they will appear in. So Donna Hilsinger, welcome.
Thank you.
John Bruno, Matthew Shoemaker, and Winona Hutchinson. So we are going to get started. We don't have opening or closing remarks for this live debate because the hour is goes pretty quickly. So,
it does, so
your first question, Mr. Murphy.
I get to start? Okay. Hello, everybody. Sackville Road, boom, right off the bat. The second line Great Northern Road corridor is without a doubt one of the busiest highways in your ward, never mind in the entire city. Depending on the time of day, and we know this because we drive by there at lunchtime, one may have to endure 3 to 5 sequences of traffic signals before successfully executing a left-hand turn at that intersection. And with the development of Ben Pino's new venture on Great Northern Road, there's concern that congestion's only going to get worse. So, Councillor Huppanen is on record in a Sault Star interview as saying traffic studies are underway now and that she listens to the information presented to Council by staff to make informed decisions and then debate the issue at Council. Councillor Shoemaker, in that same article, you said the situation has been studied repeatedly and the recommendation remains to extend Sackville Road. So, if you had to debate the issue at Council, where do you stand? Are you supportive of moving forward with what Councillor Shoemaker indicates is the current recommendation from city staff to extend Sackville Road, and why? If you're not supportive of the recommendation, what is your reasoning and what alternative solutions do you have to offer?
Donna Hilsinger, you're number one this afternoon.
Well, I love talking about traffic and cars and mobility, so this is perfect. I am not in favor of extending Sackville Road, and here's why. I think that if we want to build a community for the future, a community that's good for the people who live here today, a community that's great for the people who will live here in 10 and 20 and 30 and 50 years from now, we need to have fewer cars on the road. People are going to be driving fewer cars. People are going to be driving autonomous cars. They're going to be driving electric cars, but they're also really interested in efficient and effective public transit. They're interested in walking more to be healthy both in the summer and the winter, all 4 seasons. And people will still drive cars. I think we have to figure out through an integrated mobility and transportation plan how to build our community for the future that will reduce our dependency on cars, be better for our environment, and get people moving around in ways that are healthier and less expensive. And this is what the generations of today are looking to do. Young people are not driving cars in the same way as they did for many years, and as our community ages, we're going to see less of that. We need better parabus transit. Right now, people have to wait 2 weeks to book a parabus. So there's a whole lot of transportation issues that need to be managed, and extending Sackville Road is not going to solve the problem.
Thank you so much, Donna. And in case I forgot to mention it, if you hear a bell, there is, the first bell indicates that there are 20 seconds left for our candidate to answer the question that they are addressing. And then if you hear a double bell, that means that their time is actually up. So Donna, thanks very much. John Bruno.
You brought that down, yeah, 20 seconds left to go. And if you hear 3 bells, that means 3 angels got their wings. Hi, John.
Thanks, Tim. Thank you for inviting me to the show today. I'd like to answer that question twofold. One, I agree with things that Donna has mentioned with the active transportation and the hub trail and changing people's culture with regard to moving people, changing their habits and all of that. But I also want to express that we should have a balanced approach, and that balanced approach is that we need some roads that need we need to keep people safe. And I think the safety factor, if a road is required, and in this case it's Sackville, if it's required, I'd like to hear a lot more about the study. Certainly being a newcomer, we are not fully informed with regard to what all of the studies have said and the future ones are going to say. If we require one, then I think we should look at that, because we also have 6 months of hard snow and winter here. We can say we can change all of our ways, but certainly our seniors still need to drive cars, and we need to drive cars to get to work in the wintertime. Again, not alluding to any of the hub trails. I'm all for that, and I really want to work our active transportation so that in the future we have these alternatives, but I still believe that the balanced approach is the right one. Thank you.
Thanks, John. What's your thought, Matthew?
Well, thanks for having me today. I'm glad to be here, and thanks for hosting this debate.
Good to have you.
As Tim mentioned in his question, I've said in repeated news articles that these reports have been completed. They were done in June or July of this year, and they came forward to council. They were done by SEMA Consulting, which is an engineering firm who studied the issue and made recommendations not just on the roads that are required to relieve congestion at Second Line and Great Northern, but on trails that can run from behind Walmart into Industrial Park, through Sackville, and over to Fort Creek Conservation Area. So it's all part of the Second Line Sackville Old Garden River Road master plan that SEMA provided to us, and I am in favor of extending Sackville because that recommendation came forward. So I did vote in favor of delaying Sackville a year about 2 years ago, and then we did this further review of the situation, determined whether or not the extension of Sackville would in fact relieve congestion at Second Line and Great Northern. It was determined that it would, and so that's why I've supported the recommendation, because obviously we have a big problem at Second Line and Great Northern, and it needs to be dealt with. In addition to that, not just extending Sackville, but connecting Sackville to Industrial Park to relieve traffic off of Great Northern onto Sackville is another major part of the plan to alleviate congestion at Second Line and Great Northern. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Matthew. Winona.
Hello. I'm actually 100% in favor of extending Sackville, and whether or not the extension should go all the way up to Third Line, or if there is a way to be more fiscally responsible and tying straight into Industrial Park, is the important question. Yes, we have to have a community for our future, but we also have to have a community and safe roads today. So we cannot wait any longer for this to happen. We also need to ensure that when we do move forward with this extension, because I think it does need to happen in terms of promoting and supporting our businesses, like Mr. Pino's at that corner, and it also opens up for the development to happen beside Mr. Pino, also on Great Northern Road. If we can relieve some of the traffic that's in Industrial Park and give them an alternate route outside, and not necessarily Great Northern Road, it actually has a twofold approach in terms of successes, because it will give them an alternate outing through Sackville Road. It will also, in my opinion, relieve some of congestion that's on Pine Street, because people are trying to avoid Second Line and Great Northern Road.
Thank you so much, Winona. Any room for rebuttal? Yes, John, please.
I just want to mention that the number one priority for the ward has been congestion and traffic. And I'd like to say that over the years, the ward has changed, and certainly we've added high schools, we've added the hospital, we've added a whole bunch of different venues, which are great. It's a growing thing, and it's really great that we can do that in an expanding ward. However, we have to look at the traffic. We have to look at the safety of the people that use it, and certainly continue in our efforts and other methods of transportation. But certainly it has changed, and we need to look at it in a very health and welfare kind of way, because before we have accidents and before people are affected that way, we need to correct the problems. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Last call for rebuttal? Donna, go ahead.
Well, I understand the frustration with traffic congestion. I think that progressive communities and communities that are building themselves for the future aren't necessarily building more roads to accommodate more cars. The more we make it easier for cars to move around, the more cars we'll have. The more challenges we have in our economy, potentially, the less healthy our residents are. So ways that we can reduce our dependency on cars, not build more roads, but work to alleviate some congestion through, there are various different ways to do that, can also be considered.
Thank you. And now with your next question, John, you're up first, and Lorna is going to take the stage.
If elected, will you support an independent, comprehensive, line-by-line audit of the city's financial records each 4 years as a new council is elected? So at the start of each council's term, both the citizens of this community, the elected personnel, and the administrators will know to the penny this city's financial position. In this question, I am not talking about reviewing the city's budget. I'm talking about a line-by-line review of expenditures. Were the estimates correct? Did we get value for our tax dollars? For an example, if a contractor does not deliver by the date set forth in the contract, they pay a penalty. Where does it go? Is it applied to reduce future taxes? Is our city top-heavy in administration? Are our tax dollars applied to services we receive, or to payment of too many persons to oversee those services?
John, you're first.
Thank you, Lorna, for that question. First of all, I'd like to start off line by line. I've been involved in education, and certainly as a superintendent, we discuss budgets line by line, we discuss priorities, we discuss all of those kinds of things. When we're looking at a forensic audit of line by line, if that's the situation that we're talking about, then a forensic audit is done primarily when there is fraud, or when there is suspected fraud, or there's suspected misrepresentation of sorts. If those things are happening, then I think our first place to go is your counselor, because I think your counselor needs to help you with regard to that problem. If we're looking at line by line, I think priorities have to be established on an ongoing basis to see what that money is being spent on. Also, when we talk about line by line, when you're doing a budget, the lines are money's put in those lines. Sometimes those lines are not completed. So the 30%, the 40%, the 80% of those lines. And then what council has to do is look at those lines and say, what do we do with this money? We have extra money in this account, and we have extra money in this account. How do we put those monies together? And certainly procurement is another topic which we could talk about forever. Procurement is when people bid on things. So I think that procedure and policy needs to be looked at and needs to be followed in a very distinct way.
Thanks, John. Matthew, you are up next, sir.
Thank you for the question, Lorna. I would say that while I think that there is some value to having an outside look every now and then at the city's financial position, certain programs that the city's running, get expert reports in on how programs are being delivered in other communities. It's really not the responsibility of a third party to determine whether or not our community is top heavy, to determine whether or not a service should be cut. Those are the decisions that you elect your councillors for, and that is what I've done for the last 4 years. I personally have been reviewing the financials of the community. I personally have been reviewing the programs that we have, the services that we have, determining where we should have a deeper look at certain things, where we should try and do things differently, or try a new type of technology to enhance the way that a service is delivered. So I think it is why you elect a councillor, to do those types of things. And that's what I've been doing for the last 4 years. And that's what I'm committing to continue doing for the next 4 years. But with respect to having a third party come in and tell us whether or not our bureaucracy is properly structured, or whether or not certain service is being delivered the way it should be delivered, those are the decisions you elect councillors to make, not a third party. Thank you.
Thank you.
Am I correct then? Your answer is no, you wouldn't support a line-by-line audit.
Well,
that was my question.
It was the question, and I think that the answer is, with respect to certain programs, there is value in getting a third party in to review them. However, it is your councillor's responsibility to go line by line and determine which services need that deeper look and which ones do not.
Thank you very much.
My turn.
Your turn, Winona.
Okay, here's a little known fact that a lot of people don't know is I actually worked in accounting for over 10 years for 3 large major accounting firms. And what I can tell you is, yes, I would support it. The reason being is sometimes we get a little too complacent in terms of how we handle our funds in our companies and in our businesses and managing businesses. Myself, for over 5 years, I understand that. So yes, I would support it because I think it's important that we do have fresh eyes from time to time, even in terms not necessarily of telling us that our bureaucracies or anything like that, but more of efficiencies where we can be saving money. We need to be more fiscally responsible, and what I'm hearing time and time again, knocking on doors, is that people are not confident in how their money is being spent. So I think we need to give that comfort level back to the taxpayers who are voting us in and let them see if in fact our monies are being spent appropriately or not appropriately, responsibly or not.
And Donna, your feelings?
May I ask a question? Inherent in your question, Lorna, is an audit meant to be by a third party? I'm unclear about that.
Yes, we're talking independent and comprehensive.
Okay. Here's what I would have to say about that. We all in the private sector definitely have been challenged for years to do more with less. And I don't think that that's any different for our community. And the only way you do more with less is if you really, truly understand exactly what you're spending your money on, how you can work and to have goals and objectives to increase your revenues, and how you can work to reduce your expenses or become more efficient. I'm not sure that I think that an independent third-party audit is required to do that, although I'd like to learn more about it and certainly would consider that. I think that line by line, complete understanding of what money is being spent for is incredibly important. It will help us do more with less. Line by line can be also measured by benchmarking ourselves against other communities or other types of industries that spend money on the same types of things. So I think there's lots of ways to do it, but transparency and clarity in what we're spending money on, proper purchasing, and good accounting is extremely important.
Thank you so much. And any room for a rebuttal? Oh, John.
Just one more point that I want to bring forward is that the city accounts are all audited at the end of the year by auditors as well. I think as city councillors, you want the auditors, we need to ask the auditors more questions if we feel that there are some things that need to be addressed. Auditors are hired to give you feedback on what's happened and certainly look at all the different departments with regard to the spending that goes on. Forensic audits will cost a tremendous amount of money to accomplish, but when necessary, then those should be accomplished as well. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. Matthew, you're up next with a question from Tim.
All righty then. Expanding neighborhoods, the relocation of institutions like the hospital and St. Mary's College, developing commercial businesses, all of those things can result in a city sprawl, and Ward 3 is one of the most rapidly developing wards in the city. Factor in concerns like accessibility, health equity considerations for seniors, youth, and lower income citizens, plus the need to create seasonal opportunities for people without vehicles to enjoy areas like the Kinsman Park that's in your ward. That route's not presently covered by city transit. All of these things, plus fiscal responsibility, it makes city public transit a very complicated issue. So, what have you been hearing from Ward 3 residents about their transit concerns? And as a councillor, how would you address those issues?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Public transit obviously is critical to the economy. It's critical to the social equity of the community. It's critical to the well-being and the happiness of our residents. So what we did this last term was a comprehensive review of all the routes in Sault Ste. Marie. We had a report on the optimization of our bus routes. However, what we've been hearing since those new routes were implemented is that it has changed some of the routes that folks have come to rely on. So, for example, there are business owners in the north end of town, near 4th Line and Great Northern, that are unable to get some of their employees to work because the bus now stops at 3rd Line, I believe it is. And so there is a concern there that it is impeding economic activity because the bus doesn't get there. So what we're doing is reviewing the routes that have been optimized over the next 6, over the next 12 months, so that there can be tweaks made to the system, so that once there is once we've had a period of time with these new routes, we can determine, okay, this road is well used, this one is not. We can add a link to 4th Line, for example, or we can add a link to Kinsman Park, for example, and determine how that goes, test it out for a little while and see if there is usage of that new route. So that's what's being done, and I think that's the responsible way to continue to do it. And every, I would say, 4, 5, 6 years, you should look at the routes comprehensively again to determine if they are working for the needs of the community and where the shifting demographics are.
Thanks, Matthew. Winona?
Okay, I've been talking to taxpayers, obviously, just like my friends here. However, I have not heard any real positive remarks about our transit system. Tweaking, I think we need a little bit more. First of all, for our aging community, we have residents at Maple View, the Finnish Rest Home, and things like that who have outdoor excursions, but they're limited to where they can go because our current transport system can't even take them up to Crimson Ridge for lunch. So that's an issue for our aged people, because they are deserving of the same rights and responsibilities and recreation that we all enjoy, which they unfortunately have to rely on transit to get there. Second, our city employees, our people, our residents are having huge amounts of difficulties getting to work. Not just because of where the route stops, but the timing of it. If you work from 10 to 2, your bus system and your availability of the bus is severely diminished. So you're actually leaving, and what I've heard from some people is an hour and a half before their shift starts. Nobody wants to have to travel an hour and a half before their shift starts. I should know, I did it. I lived in Toronto. I get it. But you don't want that, and if we don't have to provide that, if we can get away from that for our citizens, that is the responsible thing to be doing for them.
Thanks, Winona. Donna?
I think that while the route optimization program was long in coming, I think we can do a lot better by getting creative about the ways that we implement transit. Certainly, I'm hearing from people, it's very difficult, especially at certain times of the day, to get to work, whether it's earlier in the mornings or later in the evenings. And that's causing problems for people. They can't get to their job, so they're having to either leave their job or find other ways or find other jobs, and that's not great for people. Public transit is integral to our community. It should be accessible to everyone. It shouldn't take 2 weeks to book a Parabus. It should be available to seniors. It should be available to young people. It should be cool and fun. It could have different kinds of buses. It could have smaller buses that do other routes. I think there's a whole different way of thinking about it where it becomes a city amenity and something that we could be really proud of. We should have bicycle racks on our buses so that you can ride your bike to the bus stop and put your bike on the bus. I mean, there's all kinds of different ways you should be able to put your skis, your cross-country skis on the bus and take them to Finn Hill. And you know, there's all kinds of ways of thinking about it if we get creative and look at how we can have this be a service for our residents and help us to be competitive in the landscape of living in Northern Ontario and make this a community that people want to move to because we treat public transit with respect.
Thank you very much, Donna. John Bruno.
I too have heard from the constituents in Ward 3 about the buses situation. Certainly some of them are complaining about the times, as my colleagues have mentioned, about the getting to work on time. And another person also, a group of people, the size of the buses. Some bus routes are well attended, some bus routes are not well attended. The size of a bus will determine the need in that area. Some people's houses are shaking because the buses are old and need repair in some cases. Those are the kinds of things, but the primary reason is to get to work. They're not using them appropriately. Our seniors, our parabuses, as was mentioned as well, are booked solid. It's very difficult. I have a 94-year-old mother, and certainly very difficult to book a time, and it's very difficult to bring seniors to certain events when that happens, and sometimes by default the seniors end up losing on that deal. So those are the kinds of issues that I've been hearing about. Certainly they want them restructured, they want them looked at, they want them to run better, and hopefully we can do that. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Rebuttal or further thoughts from anyone?
I would just say, with respect to transit itself, it has to be looked at more comprehensively. There's been some suggestion that we should have a sort of a transit on demand app, and I think they're currently looking at that. But I think bringing on demand vehicle call services like Uber or Lyft into the community all plays a role in our transit system. Now, I realize they are not a replacement for the public transit system, but they're another service that should be added to the available services in the community, and that needs to be done by an amendment to the taxi bylaw so that they are allowed to operate here, because it is currently unclear whether or not they're allowed to operate here, which has left no operators of Lyft or Uber in town. So certainly not a replacement for the public transit system, but it's one thing that we should be providing to alleviate perhaps certain pinch points in the system.
Thanks, Matthew. Winona.
Actually, I just had a thought that was triggered. One thing I think that we're really seriously missing in this whole equation is our bus drivers. They are the ones that are on these buses, and they're taking care of our citizens and traveling throughout the city. They are a wealth of information that is currently being untapped by our current council in terms of the routes and what it is that we're providing. We need to look at our buses. They're not safe in some situations. There's repetitive strain injury that's actually being looked at right now. These are other issues that I think is very important when we address our transit system, and it can't just be about the routes. It also has to be about, who's actually driving it and who's providing the service.
Anyone else? Winona, you're back up again.
Well, you hear the question, because Lorna's are long.
Okay.
As opposed to Tim's.
Paragraph.
We've often heard that this city says it's open for business. Do you think the fact that in the last year our council can be seen in newspapers and on television to attempted to shut down a zoo that has been rescuing animals for 30 years, and a historical tourist attraction that has been operating in its present position for 24 years. Does this impact positively or negatively on the assertion that we are open for business?
Wow. How much time do I have on this one?
90 seconds.
Okay, first of all, with the first part of the question in terms of Spruce Haven, regardless of what you feel in terms of animal rights or whatever, it is still a business, and it is still a responsibility of our council member to represent everybody in our ward and in our city, regardless of what we may feel personally. So I do know that there has been issues in the past and probably still ongoing in terms of how we are dealing with that business in some members of our council. However, it should not be allowed. We are supposed to be representing each and every one of us, regardless of our personal beliefs. Second part of the question with respect to Norgoma, I don't think it's setting the tone that we're open for business at all, either way. The Norgoma is actually being currently run by our youth, and they are the ones that are currently investing their time, their energy, and in very many cases, their volunteer sweat and time to provide this historical, in their beliefs, a historical landmark that should be shared and continued within our city. What I don't think is that if we're going to be set to move it, condemn it, sink it, whatever, again, it's our personal beliefs, and that should not be a reflection on what we provide to the city. We need to give our kids a chance, our youth a chance, and we can't tell them, you must do this, when we're supposed to be handing over the reins to them in the future.
Winona, thank you so much. Donna, how do you feel about this?
On the issue of first of all, No, I do not think that either of these two examples suggest that the community is not open for business or that council is sending the wrong message. I think in the case of Spruce Haven, there were some difficult conditions there, and I know that being in the tourism industry, that we received through our channels a lot of concerns and complaints from guests who had visited there, and council had to work their way through that and did what they did. With regards to the Nargoma, my opinion on that is, and again, having been in the tourism industry for about 40 years now, I think that the Nargoma has a place where it is. If it becomes part of a bigger plan to have significant and novel places that help us attract meetings and conferences. Out there in the world of meetings and conferences, people that associations and other types of industries and so on are always looking to take their members to places where they can have different kinds of experiences. That's one reason why the bush plane is, as an example, and the tour train are things that help us attract people for 2 and 3 days to the community, because they have venues to visit and do their business in that are different. So I think if the Nargoma was part of a bigger plan around that, I think it would be fantastic. Without that, though, I think it certainly has its challenges.
Thanks, Donna. John Bruno.
I too believe that the two situations that we described don't lead itself to not being open for business. I think, again, as was stated, the Spruce Haven was unfortunate. There were some issues that needed to be addressed, and they were addressed. And I think sometimes tough decisions have to be made. Also, with regard to the Nargoma, again, if it becomes nobody wants to see it go. It just needs to be repurposed in some form or fashion. And I think different ideas have been spurred on now, and I think things are moving in the right direction. Having it move from one area to another, I think, can still be very good for it as well. And I think in the master plan we need to include it, and certainly offer some resources if we can through the budget to make that happen. Thank you.
Matthew.
Thank you. I'm not sure the question is totally appropriate, given that the person who asked it represented the owners of Spruce Haven. However, I will say, you know my record. I voted every time to not continue the operation of Spruce Haven Zoo. It is, I think, a blemish on our community. It is a place where there is some serious concern with how the conditions are for the animals that are there. We recently heard that the bear who lived there, Ben, had to be euthanized because of advanced age. However, there is some I have concerns, and the constituents I had feedback from continually said the conditions are not appropriate for animals to live in captivity in small cages and cages where that are not safe to the public. That was a major concern of mine. There was video of a wolf jumping in and out of the cage, and that seemed to be passed off by the owners as if it was not that big of a deal, and I think it was a very big deal. So I know there was concern from the neighborhood. I know there was concern from people in Ward 3 who had reached out to me. I don't think it suggests that we're not open for business if we're simply trying to protect public safety by closing down a place that had serious concerns. With respect to the Nargoma, my record is clear. I voted every time to remove it from Bondar Park, and I will continue to do so if re-elected.
Lorna, I think Lorna would like to address.
How did you refer to me? Could you tell me that again?
As someone who represented the owners of Spruce Haven.
No, the ratepayers represented Spruce Haven. It was not me personally. Okay.
Well, you were the representative of the ratepayers who represented Spruce Haven.
Thank you, Matthew. Winona.
I just did it. Did I miss something? But you know, I'd like to rebut. Can I do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
See, I knew that.
She was psychic.
You knew,
I knew that. Yeah.
You got it.
Yeah. Welcome to our psychic debate.
Wow.
What's your next question?
Okay, don't start my time yet. Actually, I just want to make a point here. Again, with Spruce Haven, it was a provincial matter. It is actually governed by the ministry, and it should have been left there. This council made a decision, and we need to deal with that and move on from there. However, the continuous harassment, and I understand that one of the members of council has actually been questioned in terms of an integrity investigation. investigation. That stuff is what we need to stop. We need to move past this. We need to, the owners of Spruce Haven have made changes. They care very much about their animals. All their animals live beyond the expected normal age. And I think with the Roberta Bondar, in terms of the boat, give them a chance. If it needs to stay there, and I've attended activities there, the young people that have a vision and they're going forward and they're investing their energy and they want to make something out of it and they don't want to lose all of our history, regardless of what it looks like.
Thanks, Winona. And Matthew, you've indicated you have a rebuttal or further comment?
Yes, I want to, Judy's not here, obviously, and she was a big proponent of changing the way Spruce Haven has operated, and in fact, I think she was a proponent of banning the zoo altogether. There was an Integrity Commissioner investigation into her conduct, and they did find that there was no inappropriate conduct, so I don't want that to be left on the table as if it is some question to her integrity. I have known Judy to be a very kind and well-intentioned person. Whether you disagree with her on this issue or not, I think she there should be no suggestion that there was improper conduct on her part.
Thank you so much.
Nor do I know if that was necessarily being suggested. I just want to put it out on the table that yes.
Thank you. Any more room for rebuttal?
What's that?
Oh. Mr. Shoemaker, I have a question for you. Are you aware that the Integrity Commissioner on her investigation did not even interview Helen Marshall?
We'll move on from this subject after you're done.
We had a finding, a report at council that was provided by the Integrity Commissioner that stated that there was no misconduct. So the process is a process that is outside of City Council's hands. The Integrity Commissioner conducts the process however they determine appropriate, and so I don't necessarily wish to comment on who was interviewed and who was not.
Thank you. And question now, and Donna, we're back to you as number one.
What? Oh, I get to ask a question?
Yes.
Okay, I think I need a pill first. Economic diversification. Where do you see opportunity? Now, okay, before I say this question, as a voter, I get tired of people saying, we need to do this, we need to do that, and they mention a whole bunch of ideas. I just want to hear an idea for a solution, something maybe I haven't heard, or an answer that gives me hope that there is a solution. Where do you see opportunity for development and the diversification of our local economy? Do you believe there are sectors that remain an untapped resource? See what I'm going at here? I want you to talk to me about one solid thing that you think has not been properly explored yet, where there's potential, whether it's IT or tourism, blah, 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 blah. Go, Donna.
Donna, you're first.
Well, lucky me. So
it's good to be number one.
So, Mr. Murphy, I have an answer for your question. I will give you an example of a place in industry that I think is untapped. Okay. I think food and beverage tourism, along with beer and wine making, as one example, or agriculture and tourism, is a completely untapped opportunity for us here. For example, if wine and cheese and beer can be made all over other parts of Ontario, why can we not make wine and cheese and beer here and support newcomers into that industry? There are all kinds of, there are cold grapes being formulated down in Peely in terms of being able to adapt to a climate like ours. And people by the throngs are visiting places like Prince Edward County and Niagara and Peely to go and have food and beverage experiences. I think that it's out of our wheelhouse. These are hard things to do. It takes hard work and it's going to take some investment. That is an example of something I think is just waiting for us to dive into, and we will have success.
Thanks, Donna. John, what do you think?
One of my favorite things is technology, and you may have heard this before or not, but certainly technology is an area that is growing leaps and bounds. I know people in our ward that do business on the side with technology, with major companies, and they're working hard. They don't tell anybody, they just do it. And I wonder sometimes, why don't we have that business here? It's because we don't have the infrastructure to allow them to do that. So they have their other job and then they work at this job. And technology has such a broad spectrum, and we can go from graphic design to commercials to whatever. There's a whole world out there that can be done, and it doesn't matter where the location is. The location could be Sault Ste. Marie. We just got to find the people, we got to find the interest, and we got to find how those people can come and tap into our labor force. And if we talk about labor force, we have some very good people here. Can we do better? Absolutely. But certainly those are the kinds of things that you asked for one, so that's the one. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Matthew.
Thank you for the question. I think that one area that I've been vocal about throughout the term, and that I'll continue to be vocal about, and I think council should remain vocal about, is the OLG jobs needing to be all in Sault Ste. Marie. So I have discussed this. I've written letters. I've brought resolutions. I've every chance I get, I talk to anybody who will listen about the fact that I think all the OLG jobs belong in Sault Ste. Marie, and that's something I think our council needs to continue working towards, lobbying the provincial government to ensure that Sault Ste. Marie is the only headquarters for OLG.
Thank you, Matthew. Winona.
I'm going to think of something different. I'm an avid festival goer. I love rock concerts, and I'm a little bit industrial that way. But anyway, I believe that we have a beautiful, beautiful space to offer various festivals that we could look at, jazz, rock, whatever. We can bring people to our community. If we set it straight, our local businesses can set up vendor booths, and we can sell our local wares, as well as we're actually promoting our beautiful space as well. So when people come and they participate in our festivals, they can look and we can present Sault Ste. Marie on its best, because that is what we are. We're the best. And it gives them an opportunity to view a community that they could possibly move to, which would have an additional benefit of getting those bodies into Sault Ste. Marie. We need to grow our population, and the only way to do that is through our youth. And the best way to do that is to get them where they are actually engaged. And right now, it is festivals, it's music, it's that whole entertainment sector. And we can partner with Donna's idea of the beer, and I'm in. So that's my idea.
Thank you so much, Winona. John, you have a rebuttal?
I just want to bring support to Mr. Shoemaker's idea of the Lottery Corporation. Certainly for many years, the Lottery Corporation has been here, has contributed in a great way to our economy, and we want to maintain those good paying jobs at the lottery, and it is vital that we continue to expand that and not downsize it. Thank you.
Anyone else? Room for rebuttal? Next question, then. We're going to start with John Bruno. Lorna, it's your turn.
What do you consider the two most important issues are in your ward, and why? And do you think the city listens to the concerns of the citizens on those issues?
I've been waiting to talk about this for a little while. So, the one major concern, I'm going to bring it right out, is the traffic in several areas, okay? The traffic and the congestion in the Pea Patch, and primarily Pine Street and Pleasant. We also have some indication in the Foxborough area with regard to traffic and speeding and all of that kind of stuff, the thoroughfare. Because of the congestion, people are finding these routes as alternatives to their travel. And what's happening is that the speeds are going up a little bit, and it's the safety issue in their neighborhood as well. They all have children, they're playing outside, and they're fearful that something may happen in the future. So I think all of these little things is what they're really concerned about. The issue of adding a light or a four-way stop or a three-way stop. All of these things need to be discussed, because I think we need to do something before something tragically happens. So that's a debate that should happen and will happen in the near future. And second of all, taxes. I'm going to speak very quickly on this. As one person said, I don't mind paying my taxes, but I want services for my taxes. And when you hear that some of the snow plowing's gone and some of the sidewalks are not being cleaned up anymore, they want to know where is their money. And you know, I'm paying a ton of money. How come I can't get these services, and why are those things not happening? Thank you.
Thanks so much, John. Matthew?
Thank you. During the last campaign, I heard major concerns about Pine and Pleasant. The first motion I brought, January 26, 2015, was to determine whether or not we can put a light in at Pine and Pleasant. It came back from City Council, or City staff, sorry, that a light was not warranted there, even though the high school had opened at that point and the traffic, that high school created had been factored into the count that was done at the time. Unsatisfied with that response, I brought a second motion, April 13th, 2015, my eighth motion, my eighth total motion, I should say, of the 150 that I've brought, to look at how can we resolve the problem. If council wasn't going to put a light in at the corner of Pine and Pleasant, I want to know how can we make the situation better for folks who live in the Pea Patch. So they studied the entire area from Northern Avenue to Pine Street to Pleasant Avenue over to Pentagon, and in fact they did some study all the way down to Great Northern Road and Willow and the area in front of Sioux College. The determination was that the best way to improve traffic flow in and out of the Pea Patch was to open up an unopened road allowance at the end of Northern Avenue from Northern Avenue to Princeton, which would alleviate the congestion at Pine and Pleasant. And the benefit of that is it doesn't just control the traffic at Pine and Pleasant, it actually reduces the amount of traffic that's on Pine and Pleasant, so you reduce the congestion and divert most of it elsewhere.
Thank you, Matthew. Winona?
Me again. So the two major things that I've heard from constituents knocking on doors is the best bang for their buck, because they feel that the city's not spending their money appropriately. They're not getting the roads fixed. They are not dealing with other issues in terms of where their tax money is going. One of the other issues that I hear, and is the Pea Patch, yes, but again, like John said, in its other areas as well, but particularly with the Pea Patch, it's not an egress issue in the Pea Patch, it's the safety. It's the safety of the kids crossing the street. And any resolution, no matter how many, they need to be able to change with the information that changes as society changes. And currently, with the congestion that has increased, although our population is less, more people are driving, we need to ensure that our kids are safe. The crossing guards are uncomfortable crossing the kids there. It's not about in terms of traffic flow in this particular case, that's all about safety. The other issue that I'm hearing in the ward is our drug issues. And for people to refer that our drug issues are only downtown is very unself-aware, in that our drug issues span across the city, and it's a problem that goes behind our closed doors, and families are right now trying to deal with it on their own without the proper resources.
Thank you, Winona. Donna, what do you think?
The top two issues that I'm hearing are traffic and taxes. Certainly, while I think council has tried to address the traffic issues in the Pea Patch and in the Old Garden River Road and Second Line area, the residents are not happy about the resolution, and they're continuing to press for solutions to slow down traffic on Pine Street, to add three-way stops, etc. And so in that case, I think they are listening, but we haven't resolved the problem to the satisfaction of the residents. So it's still outstanding. I understand there is a change happening at Old Garden River Road, but nothing. It doesn't seem to be happening fast enough for people. On the other side, again, it's taxes, and what people say is, I'd like to pay less taxes, but I'm okay with paying what I have, but I just don't feel that I'm getting the value for my money. Whether they're talking about snow clearing or sidewalks that kids can't walk on in the wintertime, the roads are too tight, and children are having to walk, with large snowbanks on the side, to condition of roads and other things. We just don't feel, while we're okay to pay what we're paying, we don't feel that we're getting good value for our money.
Thank you, Donna. Rebuttal, anyone? Okay. Matthew, we are going to start with you, and this will be our final question.
Oh, will it? Oh, man.
Well, unless we hurry.
Okay, well, no, I'll do this one then. Lorna, did you want to ask the okay, here's one. This is a total...
Talk amongst yourselves.
This came...
Yeah, we're good.
Is it Lorna's? No, Lorna just asked that one. It's my turn.
Okay.
This actually came from a constituent. This question. I had put it on Facebook, and this one came back. Being as centralized and enviably positioned as we are, have you given any thought to how we might monetize Sault Ste. Marie's advantageous geographical position in the blossoming cannabis industry? October 17th is fast approaching. Any plans? Do you have any ideas about cannabis legalization and how we might make some money off of that in Sault Ste. Marie?
Matthew.
I hadn't given any thought to that particular issue. I do think that there is some opportunity to be looked at with respect to cannabis legalization. I know that I have supported Sault Ste. Marie being one of the communities that will have cannabis retail locations when there was suggestion that we should request from the provincial government that these locations not be in Sault Ste. Marie. I vocally opposed such a suggestion. So I think it's a great idea. I will simply refer to my Amazon proposal that was brought October of last year to change the way we look at economic development so that we can play with the big fish, so that we compete with the big cities. That's a tongue twister. So I think that any industry that we can look at to see if there is opportunity for the Sioux to play a role in is worthwhile looking at. And if re-elected, I'd love to know at some point who asked the question, or if you're out there listening, please reach out to me, and would love to have a chat about it with you. Thank you.
Matthew, thank you. Winona.
So, I am different. What I have found when I was actually talking to a constituent who asked me that very same question, so I'm wondering if it is the same person. However, what I think is it is a wonderful opportunity to provide medical marijuana for a lot of people who don't currently have access to it. So I am full support of medical marijuana and marijuana sales in terms of our recoveries. What I would love to see monetized is perhaps maybe we could develop a center where we could grow it here and distribute it to our own city, so that way we're not dependent on other locations and buying it from another location. We can actually be self-supporting, and it would encourage economy in our own city. So I think that would be a great idea. I also want to make sure that the locations that we have, probably two would be lovely, that we have an uptown and a downtown, so it's not all just centered and everybody has an opportunity. So whether we like the idea of it or not, it's here, it's the law, but let's make sure that we have the enforcement in place to make sure that it stays where it's supposed to be and it remains clean, and it's not the stuff that's off the street, which is not entirely clean marijuana.
Thank you so much. Donna, what's your take on this?
So yes, I've thought a lot about this actually. Not because it's not my thing really, but
That's why you're all smiling.
I think that there's great opportunities for tourism in Sault Ste. Marie as it relates to the opportunity for people to come from outside of Ontario, specifically the 25 or 30 million people that live within an 8-hour drive of Sault Ste. Marie in Michigan and Ohio and Illinois, etc., who might be interested in legally enjoying cannabis. It will happen. People will come here because it's available. Starting, I think it's in April that we should be seeing retail stores here in Sault Ste. Marie where people can do that. And I think as a tourism industry, we can take advantage of that and offer ways for people to come and have that experience if that's something that they're interested in doing. On the flip side of that, I know I talked to the police chief actually earlier today just to get some information from him, which is forthcoming about how our community will handle marijuana and cannabis in terms of enforcement that Winona just referred to, and also our own local police service policies around that.
Thank you, Donna. John Bruno, what do you think?
Cannabis, again, I agree as well. It's legal. It has come to us through the provincial government, and so it's here to stay. I think we have to explore every avenue, every way of getting our retail stores, or however it's going to be laid out in April, certainly growing it, distributing it, being a regional center, northeastern regional center for distribution. All of those are great ideas, and hopefully we can and be aggressively going after it, as opposed to just kind of laying back waiting for all of those things. On another note, I think we have to get everybody ready and to go on this. Policies have to be written. Enforcement has to be, again, Donna and I are both on the police board, so we're trying to make sure that all of the enforcement, all the prevention, and all of the knowledge is given to the public so that they can make informed decisions and know exactly what has to happen, how they can purchase it, and how they can, what are the expectations when you're driving and going to work. That'll also change the workplace as well with different policies that will be established. Thank you.
Thank you. Any rebuttals or second thoughts?
I have one.
Winona?
No, I don't want the last word. What I actually wanted to make sure people understood is that marijuana can actually be a very good detoxing tool in terms of our opioid addicts right now. It can actually serve as a substitute as they come down and they want to try to wean themselves off of the harder opioid issues that we have, like fentanyl and things that prescription drugs. So again, I just want people to know that there is a very strong benefit to our community in dealing with our opioid crisis just by this offering of legal marijuana.
Thank you. Last call for rebuttal. And Mr. Director, how's our time? We have 4 minutes left for the show. Lorna, do you have a quick question?
That they could each answer in 1 minute?
Yes.
Good for you.
And Winona, we'll start with you.
Live TV.
Do you believe that each new council should review the legal agreement between the City of Sault Ste. Marie and the PUC?
Yes. Reason being is, I'm not saying that it was a bad decision. I do realize the council did buy into this lithium battery thing, and I'm not saying it's a bad idea whatsoever. I am saying, though, however, I wanted to make sure that we're making informed choices, like whether or not our fire department is equipped to deal with that kind of a storing facility in terms of the arc value. Our fire departments, firemen going to be safe if should that anything happen in an emergency situation. And I do know that with PUC, we do need to look and revisit our rates and our fares because PUC is expensive. I pay it too. And I live dollar to dollar, paycheck to paycheck as well. So yes, answer is yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Winona. Donna?
Yes, I think that's important to do once every 4 years. You know, it's a significant part of the cost and the expense that residents pay in Sault Ste. Marie, and it's always good, especially when you have new people joining council, for everybody to know where things stand and take advantage of any new opportunities or new ideas, efficiencies, etc. So I would say yes.
Thanks, Donna. John?
I'll make it brief. Yes, I agree, and certainly the show is almost over, and
TikTok, John.
It would take too long. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John. Matthew.
I would say that it's important to review the agreement at regular intervals. So whether that's 4 years, whether that's 5 years, it should be brought up to council every so often. And whether that's a new council or the same council reviewing it every couple of years or 4 years or 5 years, it's a worthwhile exercise. What I did when I was elected for the first time last term is join the PUC board and inform myself of what the relationship was between the city and the PUC. So that's another venue that councillors who are keen to know these issues can do to inform themselves. Thank you.
And thank you all. Thank you folks at home for watching, and we certainly hope that we have done our job here on TV because we want to make sure that you are very informed, and we want to make sure that you, of course, go out and vote. I'd like to say a huge thank you to Ward 3 candidates, Judy Huppanen, who unfortunately wasn't able to be here, Donna Hilsinger, John Bruno, Matthew Shoemaker, Winona Hutchinson, and to our questioners, Tim Murphy and Lorna Rudolph from the Sault Ste. Marie Association of Ratepayers. Have an awesome day. Don't forget to come back at noon tomorrow because we are going to talk to folks from Ward 4.
And if you want to vote today, advanced polls are open, 99 Foster Drive. I'll be down there after 3 o'clock. See you there.
Thank you.